Hello and welcome to 5 and 15 at the Critical Ottoman and Post-Ottoman Studies at Cornell. These are going to be very short interviews, 15 minutes, in which we ask 5 questions, thus the name 5 and 15. The hope is to be able to actually get an idea about scholars that are doing very exciting and new things in the field from right across the disciplines, from comparative literature to sociology to environmental science and so on. Today, we have with us Dr. Arif Camoglu, and I'm not going to introduce him because part of the questions is that he gets to introduce himself. So, and that is actually the first question. Hi, Arif. It's really nice of you to be able to join us today. I should really disclose that this is our first interview ever. So this is the premiere, let's just put it that way. So Arif, good morning. You are currently in Hamilton, New York, upstate New York. Is it raining where you are?
It's, I think, trying to.
It's okay, so it's cloudy. Just to give you a sense, it's raining definitely where I am in Ithaca, New York. So Arif, here we go. The first question, who are you?
Well, thank you so much, Mostafa, for having me, first and foremost, and good morning to you too. I am Arif Camoglu. I am from Turkey originally, and I was born in Bursa, where I lived till my late teens, and then I moved to Istanbul for my college education, where I did my BA and MA in English at Boğaziçi University. And then in 2014, I moved to the States to pursue my doctoral studies at Northwestern University. And I received my degree in Comparative Literature Studies last December, and I moved here, Hamilton, New York, this very August to do my postdoctoral fellowship at Colgate University. So on a more personal level, I think I can describe myself as a person and a scholar who is invested in questions of justice, accountability, and equity. And I address these issues in my research and in my teaching, with an eye on the asymmetries and hierarchies that have to do with race, gender, and class, with a particular attention to empire. And I think empire is the most personal part for me. I mean, being from Turkey, I think anyone who is claiming to be concerned about or interested in questions of oppression, censorship, inequality, I think that person has to confront or be willing to think about carefully the legacies of empire that are surrounding us today in multiple shapes and forms.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arif. So the second question, what is your project? It's very simple. What is your project? What is the main idea behind your project? What are you arguing? If you can do that in 3 minutes, it would be wonderful.
Okay, so the current book project, and I think my research, broadly speaking, has to do with what we understand by empire when we try to think about it beyond its conventional historical material conceptualizations. And by that, I mean, there is more to empire than diplomacies, bureaucracies, policies, right? There are also these affective structures in which longings, frustrations, resentments, desires also kind of contribute to the legacies and endurance of empire. So when I look at British and Ottoman writings from the 18th and 19th centuries, I come across this fixation on empire impinging on people's lives in these weird shapes and forms that are not materially locatable, such as a spirit shadow, a beloved, sometimes a family member, sometimes a monster. So the main point is that, empire lives through, survives through, in these intangible shapes and forms that I gather under the umbrella term Spectral Empire.
Wow, that's wonderful. Cool. So how did you do it? Basically, how did you come up with this research project? What kind of sources did you use? Where did you do your research? How did you end up with the final product as much as in as much of a summary as you can?
So as I just mentioned, the sources I am using are coming from 18th and 19th centuries. And for the Ottoman part, and for purposes of accuracy, I had to do some archival work. So I did archival research in Süleymaniye Kütüphanesi, Nadire Eserler Kütüphanesi in Istanbul, and utilized the digital collections of Atatürk Kitaplığı. But of course, it's not enough to have access to these documents. Then what am I going to do with them? And because Ottoman imperiality and coloniality is such a big lacuna in literary studies, I had to find some critical voice that will, help me with that. So that voice came from historical scholarship, your work, Mustafa Minawi's work, Selim Döngü's work, Madeline Zilfi, Itra Powell, all these, wonderful historians who raise questions of, imperial agency, sovereignty, colonial, enterprises as they relate to the Ottoman Empire. They kind of paved the way for me to, launch this project. And but of course, the motivation of the project is to go beyond, what is there in historically identifiable ways, and for that to address all these, immaterial manifestations of empire. I draw on critical theory quite heavily. So, and in terms of the primary sources I am using, I am honestly all over the place with the sources I am engaging with. I'm using sources from across genres, memoirs, travelogues, correspondences, poetry, fiction, that, multi-genre approach to, or exploration in which I try to understand what's happening to empire in language, in writing, from multiple perspectives and genres.
And in terms of locations where you actually looked at, is it just London and Istanbul, or did you go to different places?
For archival work, I think it's only Istanbul, and I did some preliminary research at Harvard as well, but that was just the beginning point. But the serious archival work took place in Istanbul.
Very cool. All right. So how do you see your work impacting the field? And I don't mean it in the traditional way. I'm not asking you to justify it like it is, you're applying for a grant. I mean, really, how do you see your work kind of interfering with what we already kind of are comfortable with? Sometimes a lot of the ideas that we have are kind of inherited and at one point become unquestioned. So how are you shaking up our ideas? So how are you impacting really the field and the discipline that you're in, and as well, in many ways, the world?
The world. Well, I'm very excited about the contributions my work is bringing to my field and beyond. First and foremost, this is for the first time we are seeing British and Ottoman sources read together side by side with equal distribution of attention to each. And also, this is again for the first time that we are seeing Ottoman literary sources brought to the range of postcolonial theory, compelling scholars, mostly in literary studies, to reckon with, all these different temporalities and manifestations of empire. And perhaps a little bit more ambitiously and broadly, the project seeks to reconceptualize empire, and by trying to connect the historical dimension of it with what I call historical-immaterial dimension of it. So so this is the academic scholarly part, where I think my contributions are located. In terms of what my work offers to the world, well, the best I can hope is that after all, this is a examination of how power works, how imperial power works, in ways in which that we may not be familiar with it, right? So it's about the concealment of power. It's about, the mutations of power. So I hope my work is generating awareness about how power exerts itself, how empire manifests itself, not always through brutal physical force, but sometimes by seducing us, fooling us, luring us into all these, different power structures and play fields.
Very interesting. So who do you see your target audience as being?
In terms of the academic audience, you're asking?
Academic audience, yes. And if you have ambitions for a wider audience, who would it be? Who would want to read your work, and why?
Mm-hmm. Because my work is at the intersection of historical scholarship, literary studies, and critical theory, those are the main disciplines that I am addressing myself to. And they, of course, have multiple subfields, right, that I am speaking to: Romantic studies, world literature studies, global Anglophone studies, empire studies, Ottoman studies. So it kind of multiplies. So my audience is wide and diverse. Hopefully I am doing a good job trying to clarify my points to my audience.
Got it. So just one last question. And that's hard to actually answer when you have just finished one project. But what is next? And I'm not forcing you to kind of develop a new project on the spot. But what is next for you? Say the next year or two. What's happening in your life?
So going forward, I do hope to continue my work on comparative analysis of empire with a focus on the imagined and actual Anglo-Ottoman encounters and literary relations. At the moment, I am at work on 2 short pieces, which hopefully will turn into bigger projects, hopefully separate book projects each. One of them concerns Ottoman fictional representations of slavery, and focusing particularly on domestic slavery performed by women. And the main, I think, concern of that argument is to stand firmly against the prevalent apologetic readings of Ottoman slavery that we see in literary criticism mostly. And hopefully that project will evolve into something larger, wherein I will return to the genre itself, Ottoman novel, by centering the question of Ottoman slavery therein. So basically suggesting that the institution of slavery is intrinsic to the genre itself. We cannot think about it, separately from that. And another project I am at work on concerns what Nükhet calls epidemiological Orientalism, and that kind of centers its attention on the British representations of the Ottoman Empire in the long 18th century. And hopefully that project will evolve in a way that will also turn it into something comparative, wherein I will look at British and Ottoman, narratives about illnesses and medical practices, again, with a focus on inter-imperial dynamics and examining how ethnocultural, racial, and gendered asymmetries inflect the language of, cures and infections.
Wow, really exciting. Both of them really timely, especially your work on slavery. That is very much a hot topic that a lot of us are trying to, kind of work on publicly and change some of the kind of old stereotypes that we have about the Ottoman Empire as being, an exception when it comes to slavery in the way they talk and report slavery. This is perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being our first guinea pig. And I'm really looking forward to reading more of your work. I've read some of it and it's really exciting, which is why I wanted to talk to you. So I'm looking forward to reading more of your work and seeing more of you. If someone wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, just email me. Just email me. You can email me at my Colgate email address or my Northwestern email address. So I'm very enthusiastic about responding to my emails. So
wonderful. Thank you so much, Arif. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mostafa. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.